All right, welcome Queens to another episode. I have a very special guest with me today. I have George Mycock, and he's here to discuss with me all things mental health and eating disorders. George is the CEO and founder of Myo Minds, and Myo Minds' mission statement is to demystify mental health and make sharing mainstream for exercisers and athletes, creating a future of understanding in the exercising community. So I have been looking forward to this conversation, George. So welcome officially to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get going. I'm excited to, get speaking. We've had a conversation previously that was really fun and really interesting. So yeah, hopefully I can keep up with that. As I said to you just before the pod, I'm not feeling 100% today, but hopefully I can be somewhat articulate.
I have every faith and sending you healing vibes. And if all the listeners can do the same. I have 10 quick fire questions for you, which I know you knew about, but you don't actually know the questions. So are you ready?
I'm terrified. Let's go.
I love it. Okay, number one, this is easy. Age and occupation.
Okay, I am 25. I can't say what my full-time job is because I'm not supposed to kind of link it to my Myo Mindsy stuff. But I work in, let's say quality improvement in the eating disorder world for quite a big organization. And then obviously I am CEO of Myo Minds as well at the same time.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
You're very busy. You live a full life.
I do. I think often when I go in depth with people about the stuff that I do every day, the reaction is, how are you doing that? And then my answer is always, I don't really know. I just try.
You're doing a good job. All right. Number two, weights or cardio?
Weights. I am not a cardio man. No, sir.
Oh, I'm interested in your answer to the next question then. Question number three, would you rather run a marathon as fast as possible or do 10,000 burpees as fast as possible? That's
that is horrendous. I think I'd go with the marathon, but it's the most pessimistic answer ever. I'd go with the marathon and I'd just commit to just do it. I'll just do it. Like, I suppose the question is that I have to go all out. If I have to go all out, I'll go with burpees because I feel like I get that done quicker than I would a marathon.
That's a difficult question. I don't know what my answer would be. I'd have to get the pen and paper out and draw a list of pros and cons.
Yeah, I think my knees won't like the burpees, but neither would they like the marathon. So.
No. Good job. It's only a fun question. You haven't actually got to do it.
Well, have you seen? But there's another would you rather, which is would you rather do everything you've ever said you would do in a would you rather or something else? And I can't remember what the other thing is, but I always think that is literally the worst one.
Oh wow, that's such an epic question. I'm going to find that online and get the right one.
Do.
Number four, sweet or savory?
Sweet. I would drink honey constantly. If I had to, I'd eat sugar and drink honey.
Have you ever eaten sugar out of a bag?
I don't think I have actually, which is disappointing. But I have had honey and Nutella sandwiches.
What an epic combination! I used to drink jars of Nutella.
Like melt them down, or how do you?
Yeah, so 500-gram jar of Nutella. You have to get all the foil off the top, obviously, because I've had many times where I didn't get all the foil off the top. Whack it in the microwave and then get a spoon and then literally half drink it, half eat the whole jar. That was when I was binge eating. I don't really need to ever do that anymore, but I used to do it all the time.
What happens if you left the tinfoil on? I imagine it would be explosion, electric sparks and that kind of stuff.
Those sparks and then burning.
Yeah, okay.
The house didn't burn down though. It wasn't that bad, but it definitely scares you a little bit. I was more worried about my Nutella than the house, to be honest.
I think I'm like such a like neurotic person. I wouldn't be able to look away from the microwave if I put it, even if I was certain I got rid of all the tin foil. I wouldn't be able to look away from it. I just constantly have to keep my eye on it.
Just to make sure.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. I'm excited to hear this question. Number 5, what is the most ridiculous diet you've ever followed?
Oh God. Um, you know what? I never actually. I'm quite blessed in the fact that I've always been a bit of a nutrition nerd, and I've always been a very skeptical person. So whenever the kind of diet crazes have come by, I've always I'm a big advocate for reading both sides. So I'd always read like the positives, and then I'd read what everyone hated about it, and then come to a decision. So I don't think I ever adopted like a fad diet, but I did definitely go quite intensely into the kind of bulking and cutting diet in the gym culture, and that got quite intense. Where I think I ate a variety of maybe 3 or 4 different types of foods for a
Oh,
long period of time, and just kind of increasing and decreasing the calories.
that's so bland. Chicken, rice, and broccoli, I'm sure, was one of the meals.
That was literally that. Those were the 3, and then I think the 4th one. What was it? So it's chicken,
Oats?
rice, broccoli, and no tuna. Sometimes I'd swap chicken for
Oh,
tuna, and that
no,
was it.
that's awful.
Yeah, horrendous.
Okay, I'm intrigued for this one, and sorry to put you on the spot if it's a bit difficult to answer on the spot. Tell
Okay.
us something that most women don't know about men and mental health.
Oh my god. Okay. um. God, that is really putting me on the spot. I don't think this is necessarily most women, but I think most people. I think people. Um, oh, that's so hard. I think people underestimate the role that masculinity plays in men's mental health, both in negative and positive lights. And I think we are too harsh on like I hate the phrase toxic masculinity, because I think for so many men, including myself, where it's ingrained into society that if you're a man, you're supposed to be masculine. And when we're told, so that part of society is telling us you have to be masculine, and then we're also told, but also if you reach it, then you're toxic. So you're just stuck. And I think a lot of people underestimate the impact that has on people, and it's actually what, and maybe we'll talk about as we go on, but a part of what my PhD is hopefully going to be about is the kind of intermingling of masculinity with muscularity oriented forms of disorders, and maybe we can talk about as we go on.
Oh God, I would love to dive into that. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
amazing.
Okay. So number 7, early bird or night owl?
Early bird. Although over the last like 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know what it is, maybe it's the changing of the seasons or what, but I wake up at like 6 a.m. and I'm normally a 6 a.m. get up, and I'm wide awake. But recently I wake up at 6, and then I'm like, actually I want to stay in bed, so I end up staying in bed. And I've been staying up later as well. It's still not late, like I get to like 10:30 or 11, and then I'm like dying. But it used to be 7 o'clock, and I was out for the count. So I would say normally an early bird, but recently I've been a night owl.
Oh, interesting. I also get ready for bed at 8:45 every night. So I'm
Yeah.
asleep 9:15, and I wake up naturally between 6 and 6:30. I love sleep.
I'm a big I don't I used to beat myself about it a lot, in the fact that if I don't get at least 8 hours, I physically can't cope. Like people, I don't like, and it's really not for a like laziness or like I feel like people who can work on 4 hours, they just feel different, because there's no way you can feel the way I do on anything less than 8 hours and be productive, because my brain just doesn't work. I can't speak. I can't, like, I don't work.
I am with you on that 100% because I've not got children, and my sister and my friends that have are laughing at the future me, which might not have children anyway. So they're literally like, how the hell are you going to cope with a child? Because I look after me, and I've got me and my fiance and the dog. So, and I've also run my own business. So I get to wake up without an alarm, which is a blessing, I know, but I've created this life for myself.
Mm.
And I'm in bed for like 9.5 hours, probably sleep deeply like for 8 hours. Of course, you go through the sleep cycles. No one sleeps in a deep sleep for 8 full hours. That would be like a coma. But I'm with you. If I'm any less than 7 hours, then don't talk to me. Basically.
Yeah, I have no idea how people manage it. I have massive respect for people who can do it. Although that's another thing. I do think that there's I suppose you would term it the hustle culture of like, I only sleep for 3 hours a night and I'm working for 17 hours a day, and like people that there's that so much kind of moral value tied to that. I think that's a big problem as well.
Yeah. Oh, this conversation is going to be phenomenal because I also agree. And that links into, I believe, like diet culture, the Western way of living. It all interlinks, I believe. So, okay, number 8. If you had 25 hours tomorrow in the day, what would you do with that extra hour?
Sleep.
I knew you were gonna say.
I even lent into my mic for that, just so people
Absolutely
could hear.
love it. All right, number 9.
That's all I need to say.
What do you love?
Oh, what do I love? I don't know if it's the same love and value, but the thing I value the most in my life, and the thing that I constantly strive for, is I would say knowledge. And it's something I've reassessed the way I live my life to make sure that every day I'm working towards trying to improve my knowledge and work on my ability to articulate my opinions and succinctly think, talk, and write. And I try and do that every day, and I try and work on that because it's something that I really value. And I suppose by that you could say that was love. I suppose your definition of love, isn't it? But yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, nice. I believe as well, like whatever we love and we feel passionate about, even it doesn't really feel like work. It can be seen as work, like things you've got to do, but it's not like got to do this. It's kind of like, okay, I've got a long day ahead of me, but the passion drives it, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's a difficult one. I think part of what I love about the kind of the knowledge side is the self-awareness part of it as well. So it's not just like reading books and trying to learn facts and etc., but I think also trying to learn about myself and the way I think and the way I feel, and the maybe the prejudices or the things that I'm accepting that might not necessarily be true for me or true in reality. Like, just because I read it once, I kind of think, oh, that's whatever, and then I try and delve into those thoughts and actually think, is this what I really think? And it's difficult.
Wow, I love that.
Fun.
Yeah, and I know I'm going off my own topic questions, but I want to just ask you something that's come up. It's quite a deep question. What do you think is actually true in this universe? What does truth even mean, and what is true?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's quite a philosophical question, isn't it? And I suppose there's in that there's probably an infinite amount of ways I could answer that question. So I would say what immediately comes to mind is, I think truth for me is my experience and my I can't think of a better word than articulation. I feel like I said articulation a few times already, but the way that I form my experiences within my own psyche. So I think things will happen all the time through life, and I will experience them. And then the truth is the way that I then form them and feel about them and act on them and that kind of thing. So I think that's what truth is. I'm also a fan of the kind of existentialist, I can't say the word, existentialist philosophy. And I think kind of one of the core beliefs of that is that, like, it sounds kind of dreary, but life is suffering, and that life is always going to be shit. But the beauty of that belief system is that it can be shit, but you can find a way to make it not shit for you. You can experience it in a way so that you feel great. You can have power in the fact that shit things are going to happen. I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. I feel like
you absolutely are.
Okay. Yeah. So you can have power in the fact that shit's going to happen and it's going to be really horrible sometimes, but you have the ability to be able to get through that, and you're strong enough to withstand that and hold it and get through it. And I think I love that message. I think it can sound so kind of pessimistic and nihilistic, like the idea that life is suffering and life is shit, but it's the same belief that the Buddhists have to a degree of, your life is going to be difficult, but it's your job to kind of manifest your way through it.
Yeah. And what a quote that comes to mind while actually describing that is, your perception can either be your power or your prison. Because obviously what you've described as well about your truth, I got from that it kind of interlocked with your reality, because everyone sees a different reality depending on what's going on in their head, in their internal dialogue, their experiences, their past trauma, everything. So what I'm looking at this laptop and looking at you now, and although yes, you will see the same image, you will still see it differently, even though it's the same vision and picture. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's I think it's not only the kind of present reality, it's also your memories. Like the way that we remember things in our past has such a huge effect on us, and that's why things like traumas and stuff, often the way we get through it is through talking therapy and through narrative therapy, writing it down and understanding actually what happens, so that then you could perceive it differently. So the past is still the same, but you now perceive it differently. And it's I think it's interesting in both a positive way and a negative way. Like, there's a quote from Nietzsche. For the people who don't know, he's a philosopher, old philosopher, and he said that I might be butchering this quote, but he said something like, "My memory said I did that. Pride replies, I could not have done that. Eventually, memory yields." So he's talking about how your pride and the way that you envision yourself can affect the way you remember things, because you think, oh, I couldn't have done that. There's no way I would do that. So then you just forget that it happened. And I think that can be both positive and negative, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. And one more thing before I actually eventually ask you the last question. In regards to the truth conversation, my best friend Rebecca, she explained her version of truth, which I really resonated with. And she said, truth is something that is true for everybody on the planet at the same time, all the time. So, for example, gravity is truth. The law of attraction is truth, because that's quantum physics now. We can't, yes, some of it can come across very woo-woo. I am proudly woo-woo, by the way, but also quantum physics, it is, our thoughts have an energetic field to them. Whatever we think, we attract. That is truth, because it's true for everybody all the time. And I loved that definition that she shared.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking through that. I do agree to a point. I do also think, so the example of gravity, like Isaac Newton's definition of gravity was true for everyone, because I suppose it changes depending on the way that and maybe I'm thinking way too much into this, but depends on the way that you're measuring it. Because so Isaac Newton's theory of gravity was true for everyone, and then Einstein came along and showed that it was actually a little bit wrong, but everyone still experienced it as right. So you could say that so it is true for everyone, but maybe not from a different lens. But that doesn't really question whether it's truth really, or does it? Who knows? Is truth objective, measurable truth, or is truth the experience of everyone? Because technically both those theories are felt the same by us, but mathematically or objectively they're slightly different. So then it's like, but this is very philosophical now, and my brain is not good enough for these this kind of depth.
It's great though to have a brain like yours to have a conversation with, whether we're recording or not recording actually, and also for our listeners, because you are very intelligent and you really process things, and it's actually wonderful to be in the presence of someone like that. It's very different for me, so thank you for who you are.
Oh well, I think you are overestimating my intelligence, but I appreciate the statement either way.
Of course. Okay, the final question. Why did you say yes? I'm grateful you did, but why did you say yes to coming on this podcast?
After our first conversation, I felt that we both. Well, the first thing that I would say came from that conversation was when we finished it, I felt really good, and that's always, I think, is a sign that I want to continue talking to the person. And I think we shared a lot of opinions. I think we had some opinions that were slightly different, and I think we had those different opinions, but we still kept the conversation. And I think that's I love that in a person, the fact that you can disagree on things and still continue to speak and find it interesting, because I love finding that interesting. And I know that a lot of people can can maybe, what's the word, it can topple the conversation if you start to disagree on something. And I like the fact that we managed to kind of keep going. And I thought that was very interesting. And you just seem like a very interesting and cool person. So I wanted to come and speak to you, and we might as well record it whilst we're doing so. So
thank you. No, I love that. I'm very, very open. And this sounds a bit strange, but I like it when someone comes to me and disagrees, because one, I get to learn something, and two, I get to learn something, I guess, and see it from someone else's perspective, because I'm not right and you're not wrong, and vice versa. If I would have heard myself say this 4 years ago, I would have been like, who the hell is she and what have you done with Victoria? I always had to be right, but I've gone through a lot of personal development, and I'm so open to being wrong. Please make me wrong, because then I learn. So it's great.
I think again, like this, my kind of big value in life is knowledge. And I think if someone questions me or proves that I'm wrong, I've gained so much knowledge. And even if it's a question that I eventually decide I still agree with my point, I've now strengthened my opinion and strengthened my knowledge of my opinion, because now I know why I still agree with it despite that question, or despite, so I just think it's a win-win all around. I don't see how it's a bad thing.
That is such a great way of looking at it as well. Thank you for that. Yeah, really powerful. All right. So can you share a little bit about your background? How are you the person you are today, and what have you been through? And I'm sure I'll be asking questions in between, because I know you've got a great story to share.
Yeah, I've managed to, luckily I had a few minutes before we started to kind of make some notes. So if I'm looking off to the side, that's what I'm doing. And my story is very convoluted and strange and weird. And I've had to kind of, I think like everyone does, I've had to kind of just ignore some parts of it because it would just go on for too long. So to kind of start off, I'll go from the very beginning. I had a difficult childhood. I had my dad was an alcoholic, which meant that I had to kind of deal with lots of different things going on in the house. And it meant that I kind of, I struggled with social things because I was too tired, having to like help with my dad and that kind of stuff. And that, I think that led to, or kind of those foundations meant that I had kind of little self-worth from the start, or at least little self-belief that I could do stuff, because everyday life seemed so easy for everyone else, and I couldn't understand why it was so hard for me. But it was because all this stuff going on at home, it was so much harder for me to process things and do stuff. And then not the least of problems was I actually had a really bad spinal injury when I was younger. So I had like a fracture in my spine, and then I played rugby, and I hit a ruck, and when I hit it, my spine broke. And I was basically out for the best part of a year, with kind of I had different injections and waiting for different procedures, and eventually having to have surgery to kind of get some metal in my spine to hold it together. And when that happened, I was out for a year basically, and I could barely walk, I could barely move. I literally for I'd say 8 to 9 months, I lay on my floor in my lounge downstairs because my bed was too soft, so it hurt my back. So I literally lay on my floor. So I gained a lot of weight. I was also competing as well. So I was 13 when this happened. So then what happened was I gained a lot of weight, and I went back to school at about 14, 15 years old. And the weight gain meant that, no one outright bullied me, but when you're 14, you're not the most subtle in the way that you treat people differently. So no, I don't think anyone was outrightly horrible to me, but there was definitely a sense of loss of stigma, and also like a loss of respect from my friends, because I was the rugby guy, and I was quite energetic in sport, and I think I had a bit of a bravado to me because of kind of trying to make up with my dad, the stuff going on at home. And then I came back, and I was I don't like to say weights, but I was significantly heavier than I was before. So this kind of loss of respect and loss of who I felt I was, because I also wasn't allowed to play rugby anymore after that, meant that I adopted fitness. So I started, as soon as the doctor said I was allowed to after surgery, I started going for walks. I started going on a treadmill. I started kind of lifting weights and trying to replace my self-worth, and trying to change my body through fitness instead of rugby, and through what I was before. And that's where the kind of these disordered behaviors started for me. So I kind of basically just started trying to lose weight. When I lost weight, everyone congratulated me. Everyone thought it was the best thing in the world, because that's what everyone thinks in society. If you're obese and you're you're turning not obese, then there's no way that could ever be a bad thing. Even if it got to the stage where I was pretty much starving myself and going doing multiple gym sessions and multiple runs a day. It was actually at one stage my surgeon tried to get me to come in and talk to the other people he'd done surgery on, because I'd lost weight so quickly and all of the other patients hadn't been losing weight as fast. So he was like, "Oh, you should come in and talk to us." I don't want to kind of label him as this evil man. I'm sure he didn't realize, but I was doing all these disordered behaviors, and he was basically telling me, like, "This is so amazing what you're doing. You should come and teach other people how to do it." So and with the kind of fitness world that I kind of adopted, I also listened to these kind of motivational speakers. So I used to listen to these kind of, you see them on YouTube and stuff, these like motivational clips, and I became absolutely obsessed with them. I think partly because I have like I mentioned before, masculinity plays a big part in my story, and I think for me, when I was younger, although my dad was an alcoholic, he was really kind of what do they call them, like high functioning alcoholic, in the fact that he had a really successful business, and he worked really hard, he did a lot of hours and blah blah blah. So for me, growing up, I saw being like having high work ethic and being able to endure pain, because my dad played rugby. He always came back. He always had he's got these scars on his face from his rugby days, because he used to just endure pain and go through everything. So for me, what I was supposed to be was someone who could work really hard and endure lots of pain. I basically was forced to take a year off because I couldn't endure the pain of my spine injury, and that kind of, I think, had messed with my head and made me feel like I wasn't a man, in air quotes. So these kind of motivational speakers and this fitness lifestyle, the values in the fitness lifestyle very much kind of intertwine with the masculine ideals that are promoted. So in the fitness industry, you're told to endure pain. In the fitness industry, you're told to
go hard
work,
or go home.
exactly, work ethic, and yeah, exactly, and a really big one, and we may talk about this a little bit later on as well, is battling the self. So in the fitness, you'll often talk about how, in the fitness industry, they'll talk about how, even if you're tired or you don't want to go to the gym, you're supposed to anyway, because you're supposed to not listen to those parts of yourself. You're supposed to push through them. So I would kind of, I would adopt these fitness and masculine things to try and get this respect. Somewhere along the line, I think because muscularity is tied into masculinity, like the kind of societal manly man is muscular. They're the ones that tend to be celebrated in sport and in media in general. I think one of the classic things that I always think of is in boxing. You got two heavyweight boxers, there's Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. One of them, Anthony Joshua, is this beautiful, ripped, like muscular man, and the other one is Tyson Fury, who he's a little bit overweight and he's got a bald head and he's just a bit of a geezer, and and unsurprisingly, Anthony Joshua is painted as the country's like star. Everyone loves him. What an amazing man. And they're equally successful. And I think in the boxing world, arguably the better boxer, Tyson Fury, isn't really shown as that much of a big of a deal. So things like that kind of pushed him. So this led to this kind of, these fitness and sports values led to me going to do sports science for my undergrad, and also I did sport and exercise nutrition for my master's degree. Whilst I was doing my undergrad, I started seeing a counsellor in my second year, and with him I kind of started to unpack my mental health issues and kind of see the connections from my past and kind of figure out that kind of stuff. Somewhere along the lines, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, I think. I have to put "I think" on the end, because if I'm honest, it was all very blurry. And the only solid memory I have of being diagnosed or someone telling me that I have an eating disorder was I was sat with my GP for something totally unrelated, and he looked at his screen and he turned to me and said, "Oh, it doesn't look like you've," he said, "It says here you've got an eating disorder, but it doesn't look like you've got one." And then he kind of like flexed his arm at me. Like, it's like, "Oh, you don't look like," and I was kind of, in the moment, I laughed and was like, "Yeah, I know," hi, because I was so insecure and not certain, and I was so ingrained in this fitness world that I was just like, "Yeah, there's no way I could have something like that." So I don't really know if I've been diagnosed, but I think I have. But anyway, yeah. So I with my counselor, I started. One thing I did first off, which I've learned now is called narrative therapy, was I wrote out my story and wrote out kind of how my life had been, so that I could get a better understanding of what my life was like, and get a better understanding or kind of reassess the way that I saw my own story. And a part of that, when I did that, was the next step was that I would start sharing parts of my life with other people. So the things that I would often hide from people were the things that I thought were negative. So I started sharing the what I thought were negatives with other people. And the more I did that, the more I realized that other people had the same experiences as me, especially my gym friends and my friends who were athletes. A lot of them would say, "Yeah, I actually struggled with eating as well. And I actually, sometimes if I don't exercise, I feel a bit shit, and I feel like I'm supposed to, and I don't know how much I'm supposed to do." And there's all these kind of things. So that's when I started Myo Minds. So at the end of my third year at my undergrad, I started Myo Minds, which was an Instagram account originally that was basically just a place for people to share their stories. So kind of like the way I did with my narrative therapy, I said to people, if you're into fitness or you're into sports, Basically, if you're into exercise, you can write down your mental health story however you want to, and then I'll post it on my Instagram as like a place for people who are also in the fitness and sport industry to see that everyone is going through it as well, or so many people are.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that I don't think everyone knows, but Myo Minds. So hopefully people can see
Love
it. I might turn
it.
it away.
Okay.
Myo comes from the Greek term for muscle. So that's what it's muscle mind. So the whole idea is it's the kind of fitness, exercisey people. It can be sport as well, obviously, and that kind of mind. So so it started off as an Instagram account for people to share stories. Then during my master's degree, like I said, it was in sport and exercise nutrition, but I worked really hard to kind of push my Myo Minds message during my master's, and I ended up speaking at a conference, and I got linked with a charity called First Steps ED, and I met some researchers from Nottingham University, and I started kind of different projects with them, and started kind of getting involved, and taught some seminars. I taught one at Queen's Medical Centre, which was really interesting, about stories and eating disorders, which was really fun. And now I've finished my master's degree. I've now got my full-time job in, like I said, in quality improvement in eating disorders across the UK. With Myo Minds, I'm now working on different projects with some of the UK's largest mental health organisations. So I work with Mind on a few different projects, and like I said, I still work with Nottingham Uni on some stuff, and some really exciting things. I'm trying to, they're mostly all surrounding the fitness and exercising community, or the relationship of fitness, exercise, sport with mental health. And these tend to be specifically eating disorders, exercise addiction, and muscle dysmorphia. And that is my story.
Wow, what a story. Thank you for sharing.
It's okay. That's okay. Like I said, it's a long one, and hopefully I got through it relatively succinctly.
Oh, you absolutely did. And these words that you're saying, I can't even attempt to pronounce succinctly.
Succinctly, I think.
Succinctly.
I often I'm really mean to myself. I pick very difficult to pronounce words, and I don't always know how to pronounce them. The thing what it is because I read quite a lot, I always read the words, so I like they're in my vocabulary mentally, but then I go to say them, and then I'm like, oh, blah, blah.
I would love to touch back on, so I want to back up on your story a little bit when you were starting to struggle with your disordered eating. What did that look like for you? Was it a restrictive disorder? Did that then turn into binge eating and bulimia? Like, how was that for you?
Yeah, so I've experienced the trinity, I suppose you would call it, of eating disorders, of the restriction, the binging and purging, and then the binging itself. Mine was originally kind of orientated towards thinness. So when I was first losing weight and kind of going down that spiral, then it was a lot of restriction. So just kind of over time, less and less food, and over time, more and more exercise. And that kind of was the way it was. And then I switched to a more muscularity focus. So I started to think I want to become more muscular. So I started thinking, okay, now I need to eat more food. But the idea of eating more food was still kind of wrong to me, even though now it was kind of like what do they call it? They call it like cognitive dissonance. So I had a value or something that I thought was right and I wanted, but I also behaved in a different way I kind of values that were like clashing. They didn't really make sense because that's kind of the underlying explanation for what I had, which is the muscularity oriented form of disordered eating. And it's why I think it's so interesting, and there is more research coming out about it, is the fact that you have contrasting goals. You want to be losing weight and getting leaner, but at the same time you want to be gaining weight and getting bigger, and you can't do that without the use of steroids or some kind of drug. Luckily I never actually took steroids, but yeah, so I started wanting to gain weight. So I started eating a bit more, and then that made me kind of fearful. So that's when I started purging. So I would make myself sick. I'd also exercise excessively after eating as well. So, again, I don't like to give numerical values to people, but I'd eat like a small, what I would say was a bad food for me, that I thought was a bad food, and then I'd run up and down the stairs a few times, however many times I thought I would need to do to burn off those calories that I'd just eaten. So things like that. And then I think somewhere along the line, I don't fully understand why I stopped making myself sick. I think it was just as I started to understand my mental health more, and started to, I guess, have more self-worth and respect myself more. I started to say, this isn't something that I should be doing to myself, or that I even want to be doing to myself. Because I do think, for me anyway, part of it was like punishment, like it was like a way of punishing myself. But I kept the kind of binge eating, and that was the binge eating. It still kind of persists somewhat to this day, and I think we'll talk about this probably later on as well. But I do, so just kind of eating kind of uncontrollably, and then feeling kind of shame and guilt about eating so much afterwards, which is binge eating disorder, I think, is one of the it's the eating disorder that has, I would say, some of the least amount, from my personal perception, has the least amount of respect from other people outside the eating disorder world, because they just think you like eating food, you eat a lot of food, and you just got no discipline, again in air quotes. And it's a really difficult one, but people don't understand how difficult it is, because I'd be losing all my money, because I'd be buying food constantly. Like if there was any kind of rationality within it, I wouldn't do that, because I needed money. So it is really difficult.
I used to spend 60 to 70 pounds a week on binge food. And I love that you brought that up about binge eating not being recognized as, there's not much compassion there compared to someone with anorexia, for example. But actually, in my personal and professional opinion, binge eating is a reaction to any form of restriction, mental restriction and physical restriction. And I know that, I'm sure we'll talk about this when we swap, and then you're asking me a lot of questions, but I think it's really important just to briefly touch on this. So my question to you is, George, thank you for being honest and open with all of this. Are you physically or mentally restricting with food in your life, which in my opinion is the only reason why we binge eat? Emotional eating is different, that's a separate thing, but binge eating is a reaction to any form of mental or emotional or physical restriction.
I think the reason, I'm going to kind of articulate it verbally, so I'm not just sat here thinking. The reason I think I binge eat often is because I feel shame about who I am, and I use binge eating as a way of self-punishment. But I suppose that kind of shame of who I am, or the shame that I feel about myself, tends to come from, I suppose I restrict myself emotionally in as much as I'm not very good at articulating my emotions when I'm feeling them. I'm very good at rational thought and rational articulation, but when I'm emotional and when something is actually bothering me, I like to see things as they are and rational. When there's an emotion in the way, my natural thing is like, I'm not supposed to talk about it now, because I don't know if I agree with my opinion right now, so I don't want to say it. And it's something I struggle with a lot anyway. And I think doing my podcast and doing interviews like this helps me a lot. Is I'm often scared to say my opinion because my opinion changes so often, because I'm constantly trying to nitpick at my opinion and say, no, like, you know, is this actually what I think? Let's read something else, or let's do whatever. But yeah, I think I've been, yeah. So I would say I agree that I think I emotionally restrict in the way that I don't allow myself to articulate my emotions, because I'm afraid that I'm going to say something that, I was going to say stupid, but I don't think stupid is the right way. I was going to say something that I don't believe.
That's so interesting. And again, thank you for sharing that. And again, I'm just thinking, because don't you do something in psychiatry where when you're thinking you look up to the right or something like that? I do
Yeah.
that a lot when I'm thinking. So it's an automatic behavior of mine. But yeah, that's very interesting. Do you
I
have
look up.
judgments?
Do I
Yeah.
have
Like the
judgments?
answer's gonna come from somewhere. Do you have judgments about yourself in regards to the way your body looks and what you're eating, whether it's okay or not okay, whether your body's enough or it's big enough or it's small enough or whatever enough?
I definitely still have body image issues, but nowhere near. It's an interesting one, and it's one I've been giving some thought recently, because I feel like it's changed. Because like right now, I would say my body isn't, like, if me a couple years ago saw what I look like now, I would be like in sheer panic mode, because I have more body fat and I don't have as much muscle as I once had. And I do sometimes, like we had Halloween recently, and I went to a party and there was some pictures from the party, and I didn't think my body looked like I wanted it to look. And my immediate reaction is there's some like kind of fear or kind of disgust with myself. But I now have, I guess, tools or ways of getting through them. So I think the body image concerns and judgments are still there. But I manage to get through them. So like, yeah, now, like I said before, I'd put my self-worth into my fitness, into my ability to have a six pack and to have veins or whatever. Whereas now I've come up with more reasons why I have self-worth, and I can, like, that's what I did when I saw those photos and I had a panic. I'd stopped looking at them and I reminded myself, like, what are the things that I like about myself other than my body? And then I kind of looked at them again and I was like, actually, I'm fine. Like it's not a big deal. That person's still doing all the cool stuff that I'm doing, is the same person that I am. And yeah, so I can deal with it, I think.
Yeah, wow. I agree. I don't think they ever disappear and go away. But I like to call it like the self-love toolkit. We know we have the tools and we know how to give ourselves like compassion and how to reframe things to help ourselves. But the biggest thing that helped me, and this was the last thing, I know recovery isn't just a tick box, it's a spectrum, I believe, but the last thing that I did that really helped me with my body image was writing a letter to my old ripped body and mourning the loss of, like, I was 9% body fat doing fitness modeling, getting praise from everywhere. And then I was, in the background, binging, purging, taking laxatives, like hating myself. So I wrote a really long letter to my past body, like saying thank you for everything that it was. And I'm ready to say goodbye to you now. And then it hurts because of this reason. And I'm letting go of all this validation, but I'm stepping into food freedom, body neutrality, like seeing my body as an instrument, not an ornament. And it's an ongoing mindset shift to keep in this, day and age with the society we live in, but it gets easier. Whereas a diet starts off easy and gets harder. Recovery, I believe, starts off really fucking hard, but gets easier and easier. And then you'll have a bit of a dip and then you'll remember where you started and you just keep going. So would you say and I don't like to say like it's a tick box exercise, but would you say you were recovered from an eating disorder?
I would say I'm not recovered. Um, although our conversation is making me kind of question my original thoughts. I think I don't think I can get to a place where it no longer, like, my definition of recovery would be that it's a place. I think, yeah, I guess my definition of recovery is that it would never affect you anymore. There wouldn't be those things coming in, because there are people who I've spoken to who say that they don't have that. They just don't get those thoughts and feelings. And whether or not you choose to believe those people, I don't know. But I would say I choose to believe them, if that's their experience. And yeah, I don't think, because of how ingrained those kind of self-critical thoughts are within me, I don't think I'll get to a place where I don't have them anymore. That being said, I do believe those people who have an eating disorder and have those things and then say they are recovered, like, I do believe that they can get to that stage. People can, but it's just not something that I personally resonate with. And it kind of links to, I've accepted that, and it kind of links to the, again, long word, existentialist thing I was talking about earlier, with the, like, life is suffering, but the beauty in that is that you can like deal with it. I find a lot of strength in saying, I still have this eating disorder, the eating disorder feelings and thoughts. But I was going to say voice, but I don't resonate with the idea of a voice. I think that's kind of an oversimplification. But I get through it anyway. Like, I still have those feelings and those thoughts, but I don't act on them, and I'm strong enough, I've built up enough
Resilience.
I can't think of the word. Resilience, I suppose. I've built up enough resilience in order to manage it, and that's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And with neuroplasticity, when obviously we can rewire our thought processes, this is why I personally think it gets easier over time. I'm not in a position where I never have a negative body image thought. Is that possible? I don't know. I don't think it is. But then again, maybe I'm limiting myself with a limiting belief, thinking that it's never possible to never have a body image thought again. I don't believe that. But when we're constantly, like when you've shared what you do, when you notice a trigger, or when you notice you're feeling a bit anxious, you go and do your self-love toolkit. Surely, are you then not firing your neurons to fire a certain way? So then the more you do that over time, that will just be your automatic reaction to a very slight trigger. Like, what do you think about that? And I'm just kind of thinking out loud now, and I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. So yeah. So it's the whole kind of like, those that fire together wire together, isn't it? Idea of So I think for me, I still think the result of that would be, it's still a process of that thought coming in and there being an outcome, even if the outcome does become kind of automated. And I still think I'll have that impulse. Although I definitely have it less now. Like I said, like the way my body is now, before I'd be so ashamed of it, but I can look in the mirror now and be like, I look all right. Like, or just not even think about it. Like, I can just look at myself and just be like, whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe there is some of that neuroplasticity coming in there, in the case that I've just practiced being okay with the way I look for so long that eventually I just am. So maybe, I think you were right in that. I think you didn't fully like call me out with it, but I think you have kind of secondhand called me out by saying that you don't limit yourself. Like, you're limiting yourself in the fact that you might never recover. And I think I was limiting myself in saying that. I think there is potential that I could. I don't feel like it right now, but you never know.
Yeah. And also, I'm doing loads of research at the minute around trauma. Have you read the book The Body Keeps Score?
I am about halfway through it.
Oh, how I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. So
Amazing.
Yeah, so as you know, then like emotions are stored in the body and the
Mm.
body never forgets. So it's so interesting. A real life example for myself, when I used to binge eat and eat, my go-to was chocolate, I would have this breathing thing where I'd be like, like, because my body was so on edge and it was bad and it was wrong and it was shameful and all these things, my body would physically react that way.
Mm.
Even now, sometimes when I'm in quotes recovered or very towards the end of the spectrum of recovery anyway, and eat chocolate whenever I want with total pleasure, with total relaxation in my mind, my body still does that breathing thing sometimes because it never forgets. And
Mm.
I have to just sit there and be like, I talk to myself like literally like I'm a parent talking to a child. I'm like, it's okay, sweetheart. Like just, and I love talking to myself like that now. I used to be the biggest bitch to myself ever. And again, that's just keep reframing, and then now, if I was to speak bad about myself, that would actually feel really uncomfortable to me. So
Mm.
my natural response now is self-love and self-compassion. It's took 4 years to get there, but my body physically hasn't forgotten chocolate means anxiety when I don't feel that up here. It's just very interesting to see that. So what do you think about that in regards to the body keeps score?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting concept, and I think I'm definitely, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this topic, but um, yeah, I think there are reactions that I have to things that are ingrained within me for reasons that I um, don't understand, and it's something I see a counselor still at the moment. I've like once every 2 weeks, and I try and explore things with him often that I feel physically that yeah, I still don't fully understand why I feel them. But I know, yeah, there's definitely kind of trauma in my past, and I think it does still affect me to a point. And it'd be interesting to, yeah, maybe I'll need to read more into the book and read more into it in general. But I'm interested in how we um, move away from trauma, or if you can ever unravel those kind of bodily responses to things. I think from what I remember through the book, I'm kind of I often I read a book physically and I listen to a book on Audible, so I'm listening to The Body Keeps a Score. So I'm kind of not fully tuned into it right now because I was reading, but I think in his anecdotes within that book, he talks about how people are recovering, or he speaks about people recovering through different therapies. So
Yeah, especially emotional release as well. Like,
mm,
because energy and emotions are energy emotion, as I'm sure you know. And then when we don't feel and then let go of an emotion, it stays stuck in the body like an actual object almost. So we, all of us, will have loads of stuck emotion in our body. And so, you know, I also have a therapist that I see weekly. There's nothing wrong, but I also have experienced a lot of trauma and I want to get to know myself more. And there's always, I'm crying after every session. There's a lot still to come up. So I think, and I'm listening to the book as well, funnily enough, on Audible. How strange that we're doing the same. But I think I've not finished it yet, but a lot of emotional release, like maybe deep hypnosis and that kind of thing, like feeling it in your body and then choosing to let it go and release it. So I have hope for you and for me and for everyone else out there. I have absolute hope and faith that life, in my opinion, is supposed to be joyous and full of love, but it's also a choice. We
mm,
get to choose whether we feel sorry for ourselves and get angry at our trauma and why did this happen to us and he made me do this and all of those things, which people have every right to be asking those questions. I asked those questions for a long time, but it got to a stage where I was like, this isn't serving me anymore. And I was waiting for a man on a white horse to come and save me and like make my life magic because that was my beliefs. It never happened. I saved myself, and that feeling is indescribable. So,
yeah, and I think it's a message to everyone. I think you save yourself. I think you can't rely on other people. Like we're all fucked up. Like we like every individual person is an infinitely complex plethora of experiences, opinions, thoughts, and they change every second. You can ask me a question and then 3 seconds later I have a different answer. In fact, from this conversation alone, the notes that I've written to some of the questions I've changed my answers. So, like we're infinitely complex. And you can't rely on someone else to do that. I know that's a scary thing for people, and I understand wanting to rely on someone else. I did the same. I what do they call it, serial data at one stage, where I constantly jump in and out of relationships because I thought I could be something to someone else, and then maybe that I would feel that way for me as well. Like maybe then I'd feel okay with it, but it just doesn't work. And I know it's maybe a sad thing to hear for some people, but it's the truth. And I think actually it's a really positive thing when you actually wrap your head around it and start working on yourself.
Yeah, because we all have the power within us. I sound like should be standing on a TEDx stage right now. We honestly have the power within us, each and every one of us, even if it feels like you cannot access any of that power, even if you feel powerless, which I did for a lot of my life. The power is within you because you was born with it. So just have faith, that a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. You don't need to know the how. They just need to know that it's possible. Like you're showing that it's possible. I'm showing that it's possible. None of us are healed. We've all got shit going on forever until we die. But we get to choose whether we work through that and get to explore it and use it as our power instead of our prison. That's up to us.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think often in these kind of like mental health podcasts, we're often, when we're talking, we're all kind of like happy and smiling because we're talking and we're excited what we're talking about. But I think it's really important to kind of, if you're listening, to you pause the podcast and genuinely understand that like everything isn't happy and clappy and rainbows for us. I think these podcasts can almost seem like in social media in some kind of way, and that we can get swept up in like, isn't this interesting? Isn't that great? And but like I have been as low as you can get. I've been to, again, I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to kind of like upset people, but I've got to the closest you can get to suicide that you can. And I've been there and I've lingered there and I've been there multiple times and I come out and I know, and I've tried to get better and then gone back to it, and so I know how shit it is, and it's years of trying and multiple people helping me and me helping myself and cocking up and thinking I don't know how to do it, listening to people on podcasts saying that they did it and thinking, oh, but I just can't do that, but you do and you can. It's just keep trying.
Yeah, and get support is the main thing. We're not meant to be doing this alone. We're human beings. We thrive in communities and relationships. So get help. Yeah. And what do you think is one of the main causes of eating disorders, in your opinion, George?
It's a difficult one to answer because I did a podcast once with James Downs, who is a brilliant man. He does a lot of work in eating disorders and research, and he writes and he helps with policy changes and all sorts of stuff. And our whole kind of podcast turned into us talking about the kind of reductionist view of eating disorders and people's tendency to want to reduce mental health concerns. And understandably, because if we can simplify a mental health issue, then we feel like we can understand it, and then maybe we can fix it. And there's so many people suffering and we want to fix it, but I think we have to resist that tendency or that drive to want to simplify. And I think if I said this is the thing that's causing eating disorders, I would be afraid that I would be simplifying it for the people listening. And that being said, like, again, I think they'll if you like go through my podcasts, or when we have our podcast, I'll probably end up saying, oh yeah, I think this is the main cause of eating disorders, or because I'm an infinitely confusing person. But I thought about this, and I think this is my answer is I think there are so many things that can cause them, and I don't want to simplify it because I don't want someone to feel like they're the odd one out, or they're wrong, or they're like not the right kind of eating disorder, again in air quotes, because they don't have the main way, and they've got some more obscure way. But that being said, I think there are a lot of different ways, and I think trauma and kind of adverse childhood experiences are some of the things that often play into it. I think there's the kind of classic thing is the iceberg model. So for people who don't know, there's the kind of above the sea levels, the little tip of the iceberg, and that's the eating disorder, the eating behaviors, the exercise addiction, whatever. But below it is this huge iceberg of the bullying, the family experiences, the traumas, the social media pressures, all these different things that are holding this little tip of the iceberg above the water that everyone's seeing. And it can be infinitely complex. Again, it's not straight. It's not just one thing. I think there are kind of a plethora of things, and I'm happy to talk about the plethora of things, but I don't think there is a main one, or at least I think if there is, no, I don't know if I agree with this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If there is a main one, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea that we tell people.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I agree with that. I might disagree with that when I finish this pod, but that's what I'm going with for now.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. If someone had a gun to my head and said, give me the main cause of eating disorders, and I believe this to be true in my experience from working with many women, because I do primarily work with women, the main cause of eating disorders is, and again, there is exceptions, especially with extreme trauma and childhood sexual abuse as well, but the main majority of the reason why people stop messing with their food is because of body image, and they don't like what they see when they look in the mirror because of the pressures in society to look a certain way. And of course, there's going to be other reasons like trauma, and that big iceberg is a great analogy to use. But I think, again, I don't like to generalize because, as you said, it's like maybe missing a few people when I want to acknowledge everybody. But from my experience, that's the main reason what I see is body image and lack of basically attaching self-worth to body image so much. It's so intertwined that they cannot stop trying to diet or manipulate their food, because who are they without a smaller body? They can't even, and I've been there. That's why I understand. That's what I think.
I would say that I think I agree with you. I think that internalizing your body image with self-worth is almost like it's like the bridge. It's the thing that regulates, again, not for everyone, but it's the thing that regulates the traumas and experiences in life to an eating disorder. So I think people will have like negative experiences or whatever happens that will cause them to have a low sense of self-worth in whatever way. Then that low sense of self-worth gets internalized and gets combined with body image or with the way they look. And that's the bridge that pushes all these things over into an eating disorder. And then that's why people start to take on those behaviors.
Wow, that is such a great analogy. Yes. Like that makes so much sense to me, because you're exactly right. Let's even go deeper. It's not just body image, it's all the shit that's happened before as to why you think you're not worthy because of, what a great explanation. Thank you for that.
I'm quite glad. I might keep that. I might use that again. I'll have to think about it again and do my thing where I try and pick it apart. But I think that's a good thing. If anything taken away from this, and we've come up with a new theory.
Oh, it makes so much sense. I love it, and I'm also going to use that if that's okay.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably, as I said, that we'll come up with a new theory. I'm pretty sure there'll be research looking at body image being like regulator or the thing. Maybe there is. I'll have to read into it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me know. And I'm looking at the questions that I've got planned to ask you, because I'm going to go for another 15 minutes if that's okay for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an hour and a half. So I'm going to let my intuition pick. I think this is really important to talk about, because I also have experienced this for myself, and it definitely has helped me. Why do you think that when we hear other people sharing their stories, even if the person sharing isn't recovered, isn't all happy, isn't all jolly and rainbows and sunshine, maybe they're really stuck in the grasp of it. Why do you think it really helps us as humans to listen and to hear other people's stories?
Yeah, so I actually, I said I'm working on a PhD, but before this one that I'm currently working on, I actually tried to get funding for another idea, which was trying to research the use of narratives and the use of reading someone's story, and how it would affect people. I was in particular athletes, with like mental health things, and there's actually there's quite a lot of research. There's a pool of research that looks at the use of narratives or the use of stories, as a way of trying to help with mental health conditions. And there's actually, for the people who aren't research heads listening, there's a systematic review, which is basically where someone takes all the kind of, or like a big chunk of the research that lots of people have done, and puts them all together, and then systematically, so kind of in a certain method, goes through them and reviews them all and comes up with the main findings from it. So
Yeah.
they're kind of seen as like the dog's bollocks, so to speak, of research. Like they're like they're the best you can do, because they're not just a research project. They're taking all the research projects and seeing what all of them say.
Yeah.
And that they looked at the way that when people read mental health based stories, what effects they have on people. And what was found was multiple benefits came from it. So one of them was the reduction of stigma around mental health. That includes both on other people and on themselves. So not stigmatizing the way you feel, or not stigmatizing the way other people feel as much, because I suppose you see how it's affected someone's life, or you see how it came to pass, or came to become a thing in someone's life. They also found that it improved validation of their own experiences. So, I'm sure a lot of us can resonate with this. If you're experiencing something and then someone articulates it in a way that clicks with you, you immediately think, oh wow, so what I'm thinking is a thing, like this person thinks it as well. Isn't that great? And you feel a bit better. There's also increases in hope of recovery. So if you hear someone's story and they've recovered, and people tend to feel that more hopeful that they could recover, and that maybe pushes them towards help-seeking behavior, etc. And finally, is the ability just to disclose their own stories to others. So people tend to, if they hear someone else's story, I suppose, because of the way they react to that story, maybe then they feel like, oh, I could actually tell someone else, and maybe they'll react in the same way to me. So I think that's what I think. It's a combination of those things, and that's kind of what the research alludes to. And I think my opinion is basically the same.
Yeah, which is why you have created this amazing platform, Myo Minds, for just that. And
Exactly.
I agree. Like, when I was at the depth of my binge eating, we always compare to others, but we always think that no one can be worse than me. I'm the one person that's even more fucked up than anyone, and I can't hit. Everyone thinks the same. And I don't want to generalize again when I'm saying everyone, but 99.9% of clients that have come to work with me at the beginning, before signing up, they've been, but I will be the one person that it won't work for, or I'm the one person who's beyond help. And I understand how that feels. But so hearing someone also, because I used to bake cookies, for example, and then so I didn't eat the whole batch, I would put them in the bin and then put washing up liquid over the cookies in the bin, but then get them back out the bin anyway and try and pick around the washing up liquid to eat it. Because it was like I was a drug addict and I was addicted to like food. And when I've shared that before, some people have been like, oh my God, I thought I got food out the bin. And I was like, oh no, girl, trust me, I've used to do it all the time. And it validates how you feel, doesn't it? And makes you feel not as crazy.
Yeah, and I'm a fellow bin picker myself, so I definitely resonate with that, and maybe that's given some other people some more validation in that. But yeah, I think it is such an important thing, and I think there's also I hadn't prepped this in my notes, so I can't tell you the study itself, but I know that there is research as well looking at the use of the narratives, and there's the whole narrative therapy, and there's a plethora of research around about that, that telling your story and writing out your story helps with kind of I think the words they use is reevaluate your own story, or reevaluate your own self-identity, so you can actually identify yourself differently because of writing things out. And it's been a thing I feel like I've been famed for a while now. My friends, is I tell everyone to journal. Whenever someone comes to me with an issue, I always say, have you wrote it down? Because it's a weird thing, and I think it's so difficult to think things through properly without putting them down on paper, because it's so easy to skip over things and to ignore parts of the story, ignore things because you get emotional and you think, oh, that bit doesn't fucking matter. But then when you write it down, you think, oh shit, that bit really matters. Like, that actually makes a huge difference because I can see it on the paper. And I think, I genuinely think writing things down is such a huge thing for people.
Yeah, and I think also it's like an energetic release. So when there's something different to talking it or even thinking about it, when you physically write things down, shit just comes up from nowhere. And then you're just like, whoa, I needed that. It's almost like a bit of a feeling like a workout sometimes after a workout, when you really need to journal and you've just let it all out on paper. It's like that feels better. So I agree.
Yeah, you do. You feel better. And I think one of the most important things about journaling, and if you've done it before and you think it doesn't work for you, I think one of the most common mistakes people make is you're not actually honest. You don't actually, and it can be difficult to fully kind of listen to your thoughts properly, because I think we're so used to trying to skip through them and find the stuff that's valuable. But really write down the things that you do. And a technique that I always used to tell people to do was, I used to call it the fucked up first page, which was in my journal. I'd write something like really horrible on the first page that I never want anyone to see or hear. And then whenever I'm writing in my journal, I know I can be fully honest with myself, because no one's ever going to find that journal, because I know I'm not going to ever let anyone find it, because if they see the first page, they'll think I'm whatever. So, I always used to tell people to do that. Write something really fucked up on your first page, whether it's true or false or whatever. And then you'll never let anyone see it. And then you can be truly honest with yourself and truly write exactly what you think, even if it's not what you want to think. It's better to know that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. It's better to know what fucked up stuff you're thinking about yourself or about other people or whatever, than it is to pretend it's not there. And you can't be ashamed of yourself for that, because we're human and we all think horrible shit from time to time.
Yeah, I love that, because you've basically described yourself with the fucked up first page, which I love. It's creating a safe space, isn't it, for yourself to share? So it's creating that safety. Absolutely. Exactly. And I'm so curious, and I can't wait to hear your answer for this, by the way. During all of your research and studies, have you found a correlation or a causation, if I'm even using the correct vocabulary there, excuse me if I'm not, with eating disorders and people that work out and go to the gym? Because from personal experience, I've been diagnosed with anorexia when I was a teenager, but when I was diagnosed with bulimia and binge eating disorder when I was in the fitness space, that fucked me up way more than the anorexia being in the fitness space, in all honesty.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked this. When you were like, "There's only 15 minutes left, I'm gonna have to pick one," I was like, "Please let this be one of them." I have several answers, but I'll try and be succinct again. So I think with athletes and with people in the fitness industry, there are several things that play, and it's shown in a lot of the research that people, or at least it's suggested in a lot of the research, that people who are into sport and people who are in the fitness industry tend to be more likely to have an eating disorder or have some form of disordered eating. And I think there are several reasons. So the first one I would say is general anxiety around nutrition. So there's so much information when you go into the sport or fitness world. I'm just going to call it fitness, just so I don't keep saying sport or fitness.
Yeah.
When you go into the fitness world, there's suddenly so much information about nutrition. There's so many, and there's so much like cults stuff of, you know, like keto is the best. If you don't do keto, you're the devil. No, carbs are the best. If you don't eat carbs, you're the devil. No, you know, all this stuff about, you know, if you don't do stuff, then you're wrong. But also if you do the opposite, then you're also wrong. And it creates so much more anxiety around nutrition. And we know that anxiety is a correlator with disordered eating behaviors, so that it kind of links there. The next one is we know there's a very kind of strong link between disordered eating disorders with perfectionism and rigidity, and also they tend to be things that regulate or at least play into the relationship between disordered eating and compulsive exercise, or like an exercise addiction. And within the fitness community, perfectionism is pushed because you want to have the best body, you want to be the best, you want to have the best workout, you want to, you know, eat the best foods. Yeah, everything has to be the best and the perfect way, because that's what you're trying to get. And I know I said I wasn't going to say sport and fitness, but I think the separation here is important. In sport in particular, you know, you want to win, you're pushed to win. And I'm not trying to shit on sport in any way like that. I think that's fine. Like there is a distinction that I can say here. Actually, I've just remembered. There is a positive form of perfectionism. You know, perfectionism by definition is striving to be something, you know, the best, or you're striving for a perfect goal in some kind of way. And it becomes a problem when it becomes what I think in the papers they tend to term dysfunctional perfectionism, which is when your inability to obtain that goal consistently becomes a source of self-critical behavior. So because I'm not perfect every single day, every single second, I'm now a piece of shit. And that's where the problem comes in. And fitness and sport put perfectionism into your life. And then also there's rigidity, which, you know, rigidity is something that ties into dysfunctional perfectionism as well. And in the fitness community, you're told you're supposed to eat at this specific time, don't eat after this specific time, make sure you hit your anabolic window after your workout, all this bullshit, you know. And that, again, that rigidity and perfectionism are linked to disordered eating. So again, pushing towards that. Next is the weight and shape concern. So obviously in the fitness community, there's a lot of pressure to be a certain weight and to be a certain shape. In Instagram, there's images. I mean, we all know about the kind of comparisons of Instagram and the bodies that you're seeing, and that puts a lot of pressure on you to weigh a certain amount and to look a certain way for your body to be a certain shape. And weight and shape concerns are seen in pretty much every eating disorder research ever done that measures it. There's shown to be a correlation between the two. If you're more concerned with your weight and shape, you tend to have higher levels of disordered eating. So again, that's pushing towards it. And then the fourth one is one that I've been thinking about recently, and is one that is going to tie into my PhD, but I won't go too much into it. But I think there's research looking at the values of the fitness community, at least when looking at, so they did what's called a thematic analysis. So for the people who don't know, that's when you take the kind of written data. So they went through social medias and found what people were posting on fitness social media. And then they read through it and they put them into themes. So they put like this guy talks about this, and this, and they found what were more common themes. And one of the real common themes was this idea of battling the self, which is what I spoke about earlier. That idea of, if you feel tired, your body will tell you you're tired. Your body will tell you shouldn't work out, you shouldn't go for that extra 10 minutes, whatever. But you have to ignore that, because that's just weakness leaving the body, or you're no pain, no gain, whatever bullshit they say.
Or is it pain is fat crying or some bullshit?
Yes, yeah, all that kind of shit. Yeah, you know, exactly. They're the perfect examples. And I give my opinion, and again, this is purely an opinion. This isn't like I think there is some stuff supporting this, but this is my opinion, is how are we supposed to know when something has become a mental health issue, and when something is in that category of things that we're supposed to ignore? So how am I supposed to know that this wanting to to not eat this food is, let's say wanting to not eat this piece of cake is actually just a thing that I'm supposed to ignore and it's fine, and it's just a battle in the self thing. I just have to keep pushing, or it's an eating disorder thought, and it's like, and we're teaching people that whole battle in the self-value is teaching people that you have to ignore these things and push through them. And I think that's a concoction for disordered behaviors. And I think it's one of the reasons why so many people in the fitness community don't understand that there might be a problem there. And I think I often get people think that I hate exercise or I hate fitness in general, but I don't.
From it.
I'd fall from it. I exercise frequently, and I love fitness, and I love sport, and I love the gym. But the environment of the fitness community is perfect for disordered behaviors to generate and escalate towards a full-blown eating disorder.
Oh God. I love everything you've said, and I'm going to listen to this back for sure, because that's helped me so much in regards to understanding myself, understanding a lot of my clients are into fitness. We tend to attract the person that we was when we needed help. I tend to attract those type of clients. And it's so often said, just try harder, you need more willpower. Whereas actually eating and willpower doesn't work, because it's like if I said to you, George, I will pay you £1 million if you can hold your breath for half an hour. Could you do it?
Exactly.
Your biology is going to take over. Of course you're going to breathe. Even no matter how much you want that £1 million, your biology is going to force you to breathe. So it may sound dramatic describing that in regards to food, but it's not, because the way our bodies see restriction of any kind, we don't know. Well, we've got Tesco down the road. Your body doesn't know that. It just thinks he or she is thinking about lack of food. Therefore, I must eat loads now just in case. Even if you're eating food, if you're thinking, can't have that, gonna diet tomorrow, you will be driven to eat by your biology. And then, of course, if you're physically restricting, you're going to be driven to eat, all to try and get you back to your set point weight range, which I can't believe I've opened this conversation up to, because we have got to end in a moment. I'll have you back on again. But that everything you said is so valuable. And thank you for putting them into so clear steps. Would you say that you had a tick box in every single
definitely
personality trait?
Yeah, all of them I resonate with massively, which is the reason why I think they're really important points.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, George. What final few questions? What is next for you, and where can people connect with you? And do you take on clients? How can people work with you or connect with you?
I mean, so first of all, the connecting and stuff. So you can find me at Myo Minds website. So myominds.com, myominds.co.uk, either of those. You can also find our social medias on there as well. I don't have clients. I don't do that kind of stuff. The way that I work with Myo Minds is we're working on several different research projects. So a lot of it is kind of tool generation. So we're developing things for GPs, for coaches, for personal trainers. And we're actually, I can't talk about it too much because it's very early doors, but I've recently had a new project that I've kind of pitched to a big organization, and they've accepted it. And I'm starting work on it, and that will hopefully be a place where people can get direct help from the Myo Minds website or through Myo Minds. Obviously, we have our stories there as well. They've been there for ages, and you're welcome to read them. We have 78 different stories if you want to read into people's lives. But yeah, so I'm carrying on with those tools and the kind of other research projects I'm doing. I'm trying to get funding for this PhD. I've got lots of people behind me, but the money is always the issue. But I'm getting there. I'm also trying to influence different policies in different ways, and trying to include muscularity in different ways and things. So yeah, they've got lots going on. But yeah, people more than welcome if you want to work with me, or if you have anything that you want to kind of get in touch with me with, go onto the Myo Minds website. You should be able to see I think my email's on there. If not, there's a contact us thing, so you can do that and it sends an email to me. And yeah, I'd love to speak to you.
Wow, you are such a gift to this world, George, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So thank you for your time and wisdom.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I can't wait to get this out to the world. So thank you, all the listeners, as well, for tuning in. And George, we will speak soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.